come to their various amicable arrangements. And actually, we're going to kick things off with a team that did have a little bit of a fight on their hands in terms of who was going to play which deck, because a number of them really like playing the Ironworks deck. We're going to get a chance to see them down the feature match area, though, see how they split it out as we see our 8-0 players here in the feature match area for round 9 of Grand Prix Liverpool. Hello and welcome to this round 9 of Grand Prix Liverpool. I'm Tim Willoughby, joined by Hall of Famer Frank Carsten, and we're going to get a chance to see our undefeated players from yesterday's rounds of Magic. We have the team of Mattia Rizzi, Francisco Sanchez and Christian Ortiz on Death Shadow, Croc Clan, Ironworks and Tron on that side, against Niels Moller, Piotr Glagowski and João Chosa on the other side of things. I know that both Glagowski and Chosa love the Croc Clan Ironworks deck, but it worked out that this time round, João is on Dredge. He's got chills, they're multiplying, and you know what? He's very much in control of things because thus far, these guys doing absolutely fantastically well, undefeated.
That's not how the song goes.
I better shape up, I guess. But here he's up against Tron, and I have to feel like João should be relatively happy with this pairing, especially given that he's on the play here, because to me, Dredge is a very, very quick deck, and Tron is really not getting anything much going before turn 3 at the earliest.
Yeah, that is true. If Dredge has a good draw, it might be able to pass the turn with, 5, maybe even more power on the battlefield on turn 2, in which case, say, a turn 3 Karn might be too late from the Tron deck, given that it's on the draw.
So initially here we saw early Faithless Looting enabling there to be a Stinkweed Imp in the graveyard. A Dredge from João means that he gets to get a Narcomoeba into play in his draw step on turn 2, as well as being able to fire off the first of those Creeping Chills. A big addition actually from Guilds of Ravnica. 2 Bloodghast coming in as he plays a land, and this is before he's even tapped any mana to cast spells on turn 2.
Yeah, well, this Dredge deck is all about putting cards from its library into the graveyard. That's what the Dredge mechanic does particularly well. And then getting creatures onto the battlefield from the graveyard without having to invest any mana into them. And there you see it. Deck is firing on all cylinders, passing turn 2 with 5 power on the battlefield. Already having gotten a free Creeping Chill trigger for some drains. So yeah, a decent draw from the Dredge deck so far, and well, I was gonna say that doesn't look good for Christian, given that he doesn't have a Tron land on turn 2, so there's not gonna be like all the 3 Urza lands by turn 3. But that Relic of Progenitus does offer some relevant interaction against the Dredge deck.
Yeah, it works out that there's enough different hate cards or sort of cards that are particularly good against archetypes that there's not too much of a fight between decks to make sure they have some. Relic of Progenitus in the main deck, though, will prove very potent indeed against what Chosa's trying to put together. The top ability to make João exile a single card from his or her graveyard, not going to be that big a deal. There's always going to be so many cards in the graveyard that it's easy, but that a pretty early use of the Relic there. It does get rid of a Stinkweed Imp and a Life from the Loam alongside a Faithless Looting, but equally I feel like that signals a little bit about Christian maybe needing the card there, because I think the Relic could have done so much more given a little bit more time.
Yeah, you could have allowed Chosa to Dredge and then maybe play some more card draw spells, and only when there are like threatening cards being flipped into the graveyard, you crack the Relic, maybe take some Bloodghast, Narcomoebas or Prized Amalgams along with it. But by sacrificing it immediately, you do prevent Chosa from using that Dredge card in his graveyard. He cannot even get it back to his hand. So maybe Chosa could be stuck without a Dredger now. That could be a benefit of using the Relic right away.
As things stand, Expedition Map will help Ortiz find his necessary Tron pieces in time, but the earliest that he can have Tron now, that being the full Urza's Mine, Urza's Tower, Urza's Power Plant, which between them tap for 7 mana, the earliest he can do that is turn 4, and turn 4 is quite slow, really, when it comes to the Tron decks.
It is, especially when you're on the draw against a fast draw from the Dredge deck. Well, Conflagrate being cast for 0. What I assume that Chosa is trying to do is to just get it into the graveyard. Many of the cards in the Dredge deck are better in the graveyard than in hand, just so that he can then use the flashback to discard several cards. He's just putting the graveyard below his lands, because honestly for the Dredge deck the graveyard kind of plays like your hand, so it's like having your hand over there. So yeah, the discard ability on Conflag Great is kind of a benefit. He's putting the cards where he wants them. So now there's a Stinkweed Imp ready to be dredged on the next turn.
As this power plant finally found there for Christian Ortiz, thanks to both, first a Chromatic Sphere, then an Ancient Stirrings. It's been a bit of hard work for him to get where he needs to be, where it seems like this Dredge deck is doing pretty decent work here in Game 1.
Ooh, that is a pretty good dredge for Chosa. Both an Archamoeba and a Bloodghast. Very useful, and perhaps even more importantly, a Fatalist Looting that he can immediately flash back to just keep going and dig deeper into his deck. And with already dredge cards, now Dark Blast in his graveyard, as well as a Golgari Thug, it means that every card he draws flips over more cards from his deck into the graveyard, which is exactly what this deck is designed to do.
So Prized Amalgam will be coming into play at the end of turn. I mean, ultimately, those dredges, I mean, they could have gone a little better. If there'd been another chill in there, then he might have been able to just close this game out this very turn, because he does have Bloodghasts to work with.
Yep. And just discarding the dredge cards that he was drawing, quote-unquote, right away to the Fatalist Looting. It's a weird mechanic, but it is pretty powerful. And Chosa choosing not to get back the Bloodghast from the graveyard, even though he had the ability to. I think he wants to protect himself from the potential of some kind of sweeper from Ortiz. With the fetch land, he still has the ability of getting back the Bloodghast on the next turn, or maybe even at the end of Ortiz's turn. Either way,
the Bloodghast wasn't lethal that turn, so there was no reason to put it in harm's way. As things stand, Christian Ortiz does sweep up his cards, though, entirely. He was not winning that one. Bit of a sketchy draw there for Christian Ortiz. Uses Relic of Progenitus early, which did get rid of some dredgers, but to be honest, some of the damage had already been done. And that's one of the interesting things to me in the matchups against Dredge, is that sometimes it works out that if you have Graveyard Hate, even if you have the likes of a Rest in Peace, it's easily possible for it to just be a little bit too slow.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of too slow, we're now on the matchup with Blue-White Control. When Joao was talking about his team's performance last night, he said, well, Clan Ironworks, we knew that was unbeatable. Dredge has been fantastic for us, and you know what? Blue-White Control's pretty slow.
Yeah. However, it is one of the more powerful decks in the current format. Has been doing quite well at GPs earlier this year. And Niels Molle, he's a former English national captain, currently back in the Netherlands, where he also grew up. He likes some control decks. Ooh, and that's an Inquisition that misses. That doesn't happen too often.
It doesn't, but at the same time, I don't know that Ritzy will mind too much, because it's an Inquisition that reveals no more land in hand for Niels Molle, and additionally, it's still early enough in the game that all of the cards that are in Niels Muller's hand thus far not going to be relevant just yet. Celestial Colonnade off the top there for Muller, obviously lovely, meaning that he does hit his land drops in spite of the fact that he didn't have lands in hand just mere moments ago. Ritzy already on 11 life, which means that in principle any Death Shadows that he's able to cast currently will be 2/2. With that Polluted Delta, in principle he can get quite a lot larger relatively quickly.
Yeah, and Ritzy basically has 2 turns to set up before that Ancestral Vision comes off of suspend. The card draw from Ancestral Vision will almost surely give Niels enough mana to cast the double Cryptic Command in his hand. So this and the next turn, these are the important turns for Ritzy. He now has a window to resolve some threats and put up a bunch of pressure. But he does need to do something soon, otherwise the card advantage from Ancestral Vision and then the availability of Cryptic Command from Molle will make things difficult for him.
Worth noting that this team on the left of our screen, one of the most experienced and decorated in terms of team play that we've seen lately. We have Mattia Rizzi, who is obviously on the Italian World Magic Cup winning team. The World Magic Cup happening next weekend in Barcelona. We also have another team champion within that team as well. We've not had too many Team Modern Unified events, but we have a Team Modern champion there in Sanchez, I believe. In Ortiz, I believe.
Yes. And, Francisco Sanchez, whose name is currently slightly misspelled. We will get that fixed shortly. He also has a finalist appearance at the Grand Prix earlier this year. So an experienced team on the left for sure. But, Molle, also experienced player. Glogowski, perhaps better known as Canister, one of the more top-ranked Polish players, and Chosa. Well, together with Glogowski, he made the top 8 of the most recent Modern GP in Atlanta. Both of them playing KCI at that point.
Yeah, Joao really does like his intricate combo decks. For a long time, he was a Jeskai Ascendancy player. But he also has picked up a limited GP win in this last year. He's having a fantastic year in Magic. One of the members of Team Axion now. You see the yellow shirts all over the European GP circuit.
Yep. Meanwhile, Molle has used Snapcaster Mage to find his 4th land, unlocking the Cryptic commands on the next turn.
Now, this is one of those matchups where you can't just look at life totals to give you any indication of how things are going. The control deck typically might go low on life because it's not really too worried about the first 10 points of life. It just wants to stay alive in total. And then on the other side of things, when you've got Death Shadow list, it will aggressively be attacking its own life total such that the Death Shadows, like you see just now coming down, end up being 1 mana, in this case, 5/5s.
Yeah, Death Shadow is such a bizarre card where suddenly attacking your own life total becomes beneficial. Sometimes when you're playing against a Death Shadow deck with a creature deck, you don't even want to attack them because that might open the possibility of them casting Death Shadow. But right now there's a counter battle over Ancestral Vision.
Yeah, 1 mana Stubborn Denial as a hard counter for this Ancestral Vision, thanks to the fact that there's Death Shadow in play, the formidable ability kicking off very nicely there.
And it is in a blue-on-blue matchup like this, you always want to do a counter battle on the opponent's turn, forcing them to tap out if they want their spells to resolve. Because Molle can counter back. He does hold Cryptic Command, and that might allow him to resolve Ancestral Vision. But then he will be passing without any available mana, giving Rizzi free reign to perhaps even win with Temur Battle Rage potentially.
So we do see a Cryptic Command here, a counter, and then another Stubborn Denial coming from Mattia Rizzi. This is an awful turn of events for Niels Molle here. If he'd been able to counter and bounce the Death Shadow, he would have earned himself some small reprieve. As things stand, Rizzi gets to make sure that there's no cards drawn by Molle. He gets to keep that Death Shadow in play. And now, with the activation of this fetch land, he's going to get in for a big old chunk of life here.
Oh yeah, I do like the decision by Molle to not just counter and draw, but rather counter and bounce to protect his life total a little bit, which is important when you're drawing a bunch of cards. But now Rizzi did have the second Stubborn Denial. Ooh, and he does have Temur Battle Rage. So that Thoughtseize is going to bring him down to 3 life, turning the Death Shadow into a 10/10. And then Temur Battle Rage gives it double strike, meaning, attack for 20. Molle still tapped out. That's it.
Well, Mattia Rizzi, the first one for points on the board for his team, because Piotr Glogowski in the middle on Krak Clan Ironworks, he picked up his game 1. We saw Joao Chosa picking up his game 1 as well. So nothing to say that even though Rizzi has been able to put things together very, very neatly on this table, that it's all going to be working out for his team. The way that things work in terms of winning a match in Team Unified Modern is, obviously we've got 3 tables going on at the same time. Whichever team wins 2 individual matches wins the kind of collective series and the round. So right now, if Piotr Glogowski wins his game 2, if Joao Chosa wins his game 2, it's not going to matter how things go for Mattia Rizzi. This is not a format where there's a difference between a 2-1 victory and a 2-0 victory. It's pretty clean cut. One team wins, one team loses.
Yeah, we've seen plenty of matches over the course of the tournament so far where one player was unable to win even a single game, But well, their teammates managed to win their respective matches. So then you still win the round as a whole as a team.
All right, so this time round we seem to have a lot of lands for Joao and a very neat arrangement of lands for Christian Ortiz, because he does appear to have the full Tron, obviously helped out a little bit by an expedition map, second copy of that map coming down here. The fact that there doesn't appear to be anything else from Ortiz, a little surprising. It's possible that we've seen some relatively heavy sideboarding before game 2. That often happens when you've got so unusual a matchup as this.
Still, these look like very poor draws from both decks. Zhao didn't find a Dredge card yet, at which point all of his card draw spells are, mediocre. They don't sift through his deck as quickly. Whereas Christian, he did manage to assemble Tron, but there's no Karn or big spell inside yet. So both decks are, not doing what they were really hoping to do in the early turns.
Now, Expedition Map, once you already have Tron, gives you a few interesting options. You don't necessarily need to get another tower. You can get things, like in this case, a Sanctum of Ugin, which is a good way of making sure that you can search up the things that you need in future turns.
Yeah, you do need a big colorless spell to trigger it first, but it does give you the option of searching another one later in the game.
And Ortiz here, he's got one piece of the puzzle. When we think about ramp decks, this is one of the things that can sometimes go a little bit wrong for ramp decks, which is they draw either all of the big spells or all of the ramp, but not a little bit of both, which is ideally where they need to be.
Yeah, I've also heard people describe Tron as a combo deck. For this reason, right? You need to draw the right combinations of lands and some big payoff cards. Like for example, a Wormcoil Engine. I would still classify Tron as more of a big mana deck, but the general philosophy is somewhat similar. Now, it does look like that Wormcoil Engine is going to come down, and that is now putting a clock on Chosa. Effectively, going to be attacking as, say, a 12-point life swing every turn, dealing 6, gaining 6. So, that's not going to be easy. Although maybe Chosa boarded in some ancient grudges. That is always a good way to stave off the beatdown.
So Chosa there getting the Bloodghast into play. It's not one that can block, but potentially if he's going to plan to somehow get around this Wormcoil Engine, he's going to need plenty of creatures in play, and that Bloodghast will be an important piece of the puzzle. Where things are going to begin and end in terms of Joao actually finding a win in this game is actually getting some dredging going. Right now, he's a graveyard-based deck that's not really utilizing its graveyard at all.
Yep. And it looked like Joao did choose not to get Bloodghast from the graveyard on his own turn, rather waiting until the end of Christian's turn. That's to play around Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, a planeswalker with a powerful sweeper ability that exiles creatures or other stuff on the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, as things stand, this Wormcoil Engine, Dredge is normally a deck that's racing through creature damage. It's really going to struggle against a big lifelinker.
Yeah, this is not the way that Chosa was hoping the game to go, I don't think. Sure, he has Assassin's Trophy. That is now going to break up the Tron. It's nice, I guess. And I think he did it during Ortiz's draw step, so that at least the tower is gone before Ortiz moves to his main phase. But, there's a thicker deck during the draw step to make it less likely to draw another piece of the tower.
Ancient Grudge on the Wormcoil Engine definitely makes it a little less scary. A 3/3 lifelinker and a 3/3 Death Toucher, not quite so bad for Chosa. He also, of course, has the flashback on Ancient Grudge to potentially nail one half of that again.
It almost seems like the Dredge deck is the control player in this particular game. Just playing removal spells for the opposing permanents. That's looking a bit different from game 1.
Now, Christian Ortiz did turn out to have another copy of Urza's Tower just available to him. That means that Khan Liberated can come down here and can get rid of Bloodghast permanently. No attacks here from Christian Ortiz.
Well, he.
Oh, sorry. Yes,
he
his web call engine has
yeah.
just gone. My apologies.
Those creatures have summoning sickness. Now this is a very tough spot for Chosa. He's facing down a very powerful board. He hasn't even found a single dredge card yet. Once you get into the transition into the mid to late game, the Tron deck is way more powerful than anything that Dredge can do. So to get out of this, yeah, I think Chosa will have to first somehow deal with those Wormcoil tokens, then get a bunch of creatures onto the battlefield, attack Karn, and hope that Ortiz has pretty much nothing. But that requires a whole bunch of things to go right, and it looked like they weren't.
Yeah, I mean, Chosa went pretty deep in his deck there without appearing to get anywhere close to a Dredger. And without a Dredger, his deck looks very mediocre. There are a whole bunch of cards in there that if you draw them are almost completely blank. I mean, yes, in principle, you can pay 4 mana for your Creeping Chill and drain your opponent for 3, but that is not a play to write home about, even in Limited. If you draw into a Narcomoeba and just cast it as a 2-mana 1-1 flyer, then you're probably paying about double what you really want to for a 1-1 flyer.
If you can even cast it in the first place, it's not like the deck has that many blue sources. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of air in there if it works out that you're not necessarily able to get your Dredge engine going. Once you've got your Dredge engine going, it works out that you're never really drawing a card to your hand for most of the game. You're just putting cards in your graveyard, and when you're putting cards in your graveyard, both those cards, absolutely stellar. So plenty to be said that's good about the Dredge deck, but if it's not dredging, then it's not a Dredge deck, and if it's not a Dredge deck, it's barely a deck.
Indeed, then, whenever a deck is named after a certain card or a mechanic, if you have a game where that card or mechanic isn't found, that doesn't really bode well.
So we're in Game 2 here for Materizzi versus Niels Moller, an explosive ending to Game 1 with Materizzi able to do the full 20 in one go with Death Shadow plus Temur Battle Rage. After sideboarding, there will of course be little spot adjustments. Both these decks relatively known quantities within the field, and blue-white control, it can have a lot of removal, which can sometimes prove problematic for Death Shadow, though the Grixis version, as opposed to the Jund version, which was the original, has a little bit more way of interacting with it because it does have some cheap counter magic. Yeah,
the Grixis Shadow deck basically includes all of the best 1-mana interactive spells in Modern, and it combines that with pretty much the biggest creatures you can play for a single mana. Now, that Shadow does need your life total to fall down to 12 or lower before you can cast it for a single black, and Gurmag Angler needs 6 cards in the graveyard, but when it works, the deck can operate off of even a single Watery Grave.
Yeah, I really like the addition of Stubborn Denial to the deck as well, because assuming that you can get one of your creatures into play, it will almost certainly be big enough to turn on Formidable. And once you have Formidable, i.e. a creature with power of 4 or greater, Stubborn Denial just becomes one of the most efficient answers to a lot of the things that would be able to stop your gigantic creature.
Indeed, and many of the things you want to counter in Modern are instants or sorcery spells. Meanwhile, the white-blue control deck, that is just doing whatever white-blue control players have been doing since basically the last 25 years of Magic. Just draw cards, control the board, counter whatever the opponent is doing, and eventually win the game with some late-game cards. Could be attacking with Celestial Colonnade, or nowadays winning with planeswalkers like Jace the Mind Sculptor or the Fairy Hero of Dominaria.
So at this stage in the game, both of these players just kind of in setup mode, I suppose. We're seeing Serum Visions on both sides to improve quality of cards in hand, and just gradually working towards where the real fireworks happen, which will be once Ritzy's life total is low enough that he feels like he can deploy a scary threat, and once Niels has enough lands in play that he can start to use his higher value, more expensive spells.
Yeah, as long as players are just going draw go and not doing anything, I think Niels will be happy, since the late game of the white blue deck is I think more powerful than the late game of the Grixis Shadow deck, given that the white blue control deck has access to all these powerful 4 or 5 mana cards. So it's the task is mainly for Ritzy to put some pressure down and resolve a creature.
Well, the first creature is being cast, and it looks like it's a Tasigur, the Golden Fang. So this is, in many respects, similar to Gurmag Angler. An extra ability on there that sometimes proves relevant. You can pay 4 mana to mill yourself for a couple and force your opponent to give you something back. A little bit smaller, a little bit easier to cast, requiring 1 fewer Dredge. But legendary, so it's not a card that we see quite as often in the Death Shadow lists as Gurmag Angler.
Yeah, it's not a 4-off. It's typically just maybe 1 copy, for example. Yeah, it is indeed a 1-off in Ritzy's list. So now, Niels, he's playing the control deck. He has to answer whatever Ritzy is doing. Now, Molle's list includes plenty of ways of dealing with a creature. Path to Exile is perhaps the main one. Supreme Verdict, a bit more expensive, but that also works, and importantly, cannot be countered.
Yeah, a bit of a safe one to deal with the Banana King there. It looks like that actually is a copy of Stubborn Denial in Mattia Ritzy's hand as well, so Supreme Verdict's ability to not be countered did prove relevant there. There we can see it. When you control a creature with power 4 or greater, just counter a non-creature spell. Naturally, without that, it's a Force Spike, and Force Spike occasionally will be good enough, but Stubborn Denial, it's very clearly sort of set up to be a card that protects your big creatures.
Yes, but it also works as an interactive card against combo decks. For example, countering Karklen, Ironworks or the like, or Karn Liberated. So
a Thought Scour there, meaning that even though Ritzy had got rid of much of his graveyard to be able to cast Tasigur, he's very quickly been able to refill it. That's a bit of a hallmark of this deck. And here's a Snapcaster Mage allowing the Thoughtseize that got milled by Thought Scour to target Niels Moller. We get a good old look at what's going on in his hand. So there's an Oust there, a couple of copies of Cryptic Command, Terminus, and a Flooded Strand. This whole 2 Cryptic Command, 1 Terminus hand is something that seems a little familiar if you were watching the last game. This time round, he's got a little bit more land to work with, and Oust as well. And one of those Cryptic Commands looks like it's going to be the card taken by this Thoughtseize.
Yeah, it's arguably the most powerful card in there, potentially providing card advantage if the game goes long. All those 1-for-1 removal spells, I mean, Terminus is likely just going to sweep a single creature in this particular matchup. Not super scary, but yeah, looks like we are entering a long game. Now the Snapcaster Mage by itself doesn't really warrant an answer yet. Definitely not a 6-mana one like Terminus. And Oust, yeah, that will just put it back into the library, which is also not where you want to see it.
Yeah, Snapcaster Mage damage, it takes a while to add up, but we have certainly seen it, especially from some control decks. Rest in Peace coming along. I actually like Rest in Peace quite a bit against these Death Shadow decks. It's not like they're an obvious graveyard combo deck, but it does limit the potency of, for example, your Gurmag Angler. If you've got Kolaghan's Command in there, which you are hoping to get things back with, that's not going to work out so well. Your Snapcaster Mages aren't nearly as good without a graveyard to work with. So it's one of those cards that is a slight value upgrade rather than being a backbreaker.
Indeed, it is useful to have it, especially when you go to a long game, making it very hard to cast those delve creatures, or limiting the efficiency of Snapcaster Mage is useful. But yeah, not necessarily backbreaking. And Molle would have also liked to have it a bit earlier, so that Ritzy wouldn't have been able to cast that Tasigur for a single black mana. But hey, better late than never.
So Ritzy here having a good odd think about his scry from a Serum Visions. Anytime he's thinking that, yeah, top, that's every reason for Niels Moller to be a little bit concerned. At the moment, this matchup, in totality between the teams, each team has 2 game wins thus far. Christian Ortiz and Joao Chosa going to their game 3. Piotr Goglowski currently a game up against Francisco Sanchez, and Mattia Ritzy currently a game up in this matchup here against Niels Moller.
Alright, so now Molle knows that there are almost surely 2 good spells lurking on top of Ritzy's deck. Doesn't really change much. Molle can still sit back, hold his Cryptic Command, have some answers. You can just use his life total as as a resource to buy some time. He doesn't really have to do anything yet. Now the two teams in the feature match area are the only ones who managed to go 8-0 yesterday. So they are going to battle it out to be the only undefeated team after this particular round.
So here we see that Colligan's command, and it's forcing a discard here. Ultimately, you would love for Colligan's command to be getting you back a card from the graveyard, being able to get regular card advantage with it pretty decent. But getting rid of a Terminus, not too shabby either. I mean, when Ritzy's got a fair idea of what's in Neil's hand, that discard potentially a little bit more valuable because he knows that it's going to hit something good.
The Rest in Peace did limit the usefulness of that Colligan's command, but Ritzy just making the best out of it, what he currently has. So, Ancestral Vision, it's a pretty good draw for Molle. He now will be able to pull ahead on card advantage in a while, which means that Ritzy has to use the next couple of turns in order to add some additional board pressure.
How does Death Shadow qualify in terms of board pressure?
Yeah,
currently, that would be a 6/6 Death Shadow.
So you have to imagine, given that Ritzy is just happily playing this Death Shadow into the Cryptic command, that there is a Stubborn Denial coming. No Ferocious yet, but given that Molle doesn't have any available mana, just the Force Spike ability is good enough. And now the last card in hand from Molle that Ritzy still knows is Oust, which is a way to put a creature back into the library. Have to imagine that Molle will point that at that Shadow.
Yeah, he's under a little bit of pressure here. 12 life seems like a lot, but it's amazing how quickly that life total will tumble given the likes of a Death Shadow on the other side of the table.
So as Molle is figuring out what to do with the cards in his hand, let me also mention some of the teams who managed to do well enough yesterday to go 7-1. So they are, let's say, right on the heels of these two teams in the feature match area in terms of the standings. There is the team of Thiago Rodriguez, Eduardo Sajgalik, and Jeremy Desani. Pretty high-profile team. There's also Andrei Strasky, Alexander Hain, and Jason Chung, the Czech-Canadian-New Zealand alliance, so to say, with Jason Chung doing very well with his blue-black mill deck yesterday. I'm hoping that he keeps showing off that deck today to good use. And also, the Netherlands represents Jesper Box, Danny de Rooij, Tom Thijssen, amongst various other teams are 7-1 as well.
Yeah, I mean, in team tournaments, often it works out that the advantage of having more experienced players is almost compounded by the fact that you've got 3 people on each team. Essentially, if you've got 3 players that naturally have a little bit of an advantage, the likelihood of them all getting unlucky is a little bit lower than if it was just a one-on-one sort of a situation. So quite frequently we see that when it comes to team tournaments, any tournament you might need a little bit of luck to do well, but if one team has a skill advantage, they're more likely to be able to leverage that in team tournaments than maybe even in individual ones.
Indeed, and there's also just the fun aspect of playing with your friends together and winning and losing together, supporting each other, as well as sitting next to your teammate, potentially giving a bit of advice or at least being involved in their game. It makes for a fun experience, all in all.
Yeah, I mean, it's the sort of thing that, I mean, I think back to when William Jensen was talking about how Team Ultimate Guard won the team series during the World Championships in Las Vegas earlier in the year, and he was saying, I've won lots of tournaments. Winning on my own is, I mean, this is all paraphrased, of course. Winning on my own is great, but it feels so much better winning alongside my best friends.
Yep. So meanwhile, this Oust has resolved. So what Oust does is it puts target creature second from the top into its owner's library. Also gives the owner 3 life. And it seems like Ritzy, in response to the Oust, wanted to use his fetch land, so that he shuffles before that Shadow gets put back second from the top. But then after Oust resolved, Molle used Field of Ruin, which forces a shuffle after all. So now that Shadow has been taken out of the battlefield and shuffled back into Ritzy's deck effectively.
Now, the fact that Oust gives the controller of the creature that's put onto the library 3 life against Death Shadow is actually kind of cute in itself. If a Death Shadow player happens to have only dropped to, 11, 10, you can oust a different creature, let them gain 3 life, and then the Death Shadow will die as well.
Mm-hmm. That is a play that can come up. Indeed, did Ritzy actually gain the 3 life? I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, we may need to just double check that. Ends up being pretty important. As things stand, though, Neil's here content to sit back on his heels a little bit, let that Ancestral Vision tick down for now.
Yeah, his life total is dwindling, but he's still looking okay. I think he does have access to Celestial Colonnade, so if he wants to, he might animate his creature land and put it down as a blocker for the Snapcaster Mage. However, that would expose it to a removal spell like Fatal Push, if Ritzy still has that in his deck after board.
Well, we have a bit of a nombo going on here. Niels Moller pointing out that Rest in Peace means that Snapcaster Mage, the best it can reasonably achieve is to jump in the way of something, and as it turns out, it can't even do that. A Fatal Push meaning that it is Ritzy with Snapcaster Mage advantage, and he's nearly got life advantage as well, which, when the Death Shadow deck has more life than you, is probably a pretty bad sign.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So Ritzy did indeed have the Fatal Push, and Moller not content to block with his Colonnade, probably scared of another Fatal Push.
So the life total's now 9-8. Both these players with plenty of lands in play, but right now Niels Moller not very many cards in hand. If this Ancestral Vision resolves, then it will work out that he's potentially going to be able to get back in this, but it needs to happen fairly soon. What do we have here from Ritzy? This is a Kolaghan's Command before Ancestral Vision resolves.
Yeah. Well, likely the discard and deal 2 ability, and if you want to use that, then better do it before the Vision resolves and Moller can just discard a land.
Okay, so negate gone. Yes, Niels is now going to draw a lot of cards. 3 off the Ancestral Vision, 1 for his turn. So he's done a fairly reasonable job of rebuying on his hand here, and he's found himself to Tension Sphere and Teferi alongside a Serum Vision. So lots of action here for Niels Moller after an Ancestral Vision. Not necessarily an unusual story, but he's only got 6 life to work with, so he's going to have to be a little bit careful here.
Well, if Moller knows that Ritzy is on complete air, then maybe leading with Teferi might be best. But given that you don't know that, starting with some perhaps less important spells might be better, and at least to the Tension Sphere gives him some breathing room, so that he's not like falling too low on life, in danger of dying to some burn spells.
Well, he's been able to find the combo of Jace and Teferi. Those are the cards that are sat in his hand. He's going to need to deploy potentially both of them to win this game. Meanwhile, his teammate Piotr Glogowski has already won his match in the middle tables against Francisco Sanchez. So the team on the right of our screen has already got 1 match win, as we see here. Our top table, Metzi Ritzy against Niels Moller, a Thoughtseize with, well, an abundance of great things to take.
Well, a Planeswalker is going to head to the graveyard, thus exile. I think Ritzy is looking at the Planeswalkers and is now asking his teammates, well, what do I actually take? Which one is better? Looks like Jace is the answer.
And ultimately, it's not going to matter, though, because look at the scoreboard in the rest of the tables. Joao Chosa, with his Dredge deck, able to defeat Christian Ortiz on Tron, and we see a bunch of handshakes there. This apparently has been a bit of the story from the tournament thus far, which is to say that Niels Moller is having a lovely time playing his control deck, and then at some point, rather than him getting to a nice, neat conclusion to his match, instead, his teammates just look across him and be like, Niels, mate, it's over.
Poor Niels.
Like, you can play a little bit more if you really want to, but quite frankly, we've already won the match. Maybe you should just chill out. So, yeah, he's ultimately, again, had to just sort of content himself with spinning his wheels a little bit while the other two guys are able to win with their assorted types of combo.
And
Good
I do
work by them.
imagine that this is something that has happened to Niels quite often this tournament, given that white-blue control often takes a long time to win. So yeah, he might be the last one playing quite often.
But congrats to those guys. They are now the last undefeated team in the room. We will have more magic for you, a little bit of Time Walk magic here from round 9 of GP Liverpool right after these messages. Hello and welcome back to coverage of Grand Prix Liverpool. I'm Tim Willoughby, this guy's Frank Carsten, and we have a little bit more Time Walk magic available for you here from Grand Prix Liverpool. Already seen our 8-0 players advancing, one of them getting to 9-0, and now we're going to get a chance to see a couple of our 7-1 teams. This is Carlos Morales, Sergio Garcia and Ricardo Sanchez up against Michael Cohn, Jonas Nika and